Welcome to the No Mom is an Island podcast. As moms, we often long for moments of being alone, but the truth is sometimes we feel downright lonely. The intention of this podcast is to show you that you aren't alone, that we all experience similar things along this mothering journey. If you enjoy this podcast, please check out the episode description to see easy ways that you can help this podcast continue and thrive. Well, multitasking masters, whatever you are doing while you listen to this podcast, we hope you enjoy hearing the story of another mom. Today we welcome Amy. Hello, Amy. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you, Andrea?
Good, thanks. So Amy and I were just discussing, we have met before. Amy was in my sister's wedding, and so we were discussing how 15 years ago we were together in the same place, and we have met, although we didn't spend a whole lot of time together, so we don't have any distinct memories, although except for perhaps recalling the wedding together. And so it's fun to hear your story, and I'm interested in hearing about your family. So why don't you tell us about your family?
Okay, so I'm married to James, and he's originally from South Korea, and he came over to the States when he was about 11. So he grew up in Ohio, and I also grew up in Ohio, so we met during our college years. And yeah, so then we ended up getting married, and now we have 3 kids. We have Elliot, who's 7, and Emmy is 4.5, and Elijah is 18 months.
Oh.
For me, raising our kids, I definitely want them to know about Korean culture.
Yes.
So I do kind of strive to know more about what his culture is. So sometimes I'll watch shows that are Korean dramas or TV shows that kind of teach me more about like what current culture is and what things are like in Korea right now. And try and learn a little bit of the language and try and teach a little bit of that to my kids so that they know a little bit about where their dad came from, as well as, the American culture, obviously, they're immersed in.
I think that's great. And good job for you learning some Korean. That's really fantastic.
Yeah, just a little. I wish I were better.
Yeah. All right. Why don't you tell us what your parenting philosophy is?
So I had kind of a difficult time with figuring out exactly what my parenting style is, but I think it's kind of ever evolving. But I think just from where I started with Elliot, he was when he was born. I didn't notice this at the time, but I definitely had some postpartum going on, and I feel like I really struggled and became a very angry person, and I felt like I didn't really know that as my obviously first child, so I didn't really know about what I was experiencing. But I felt like going through that, then I just had to start dealing with, the anger, just how my life had changed and less freedoms, but, working also on loving this, adorable child that God blessed me with. And I felt like just going from there and just seeing how, I would just have regret after regret and just feeling guilty. And so I think now I just have kind of reached a stage in my life where I just feel like, it's all about grace. And it's all about Jesus, and it's all about grace. And I feel like that's just my parenting philosophy. There's no, I have to be this kind of mom or this kind of mom, but it's just trying to love my kids well and trying to just give them grace when they make mistakes and give myself grace as I try to parent them and often have no idea what I'm doing.
Right.
So it's just a grace.
Yeah, I think a philosophy of grace is a fantastic philosophy, one that can morph as things change in your family with ages and stages of life and things like that. And I think the ability to show your children grace as well as yourself grace is a beautiful picture of what God does for us. And fantastic parenting. Grace can be really hard to show. And I think when we focus on that being our philosophy, I think that makes for a deep impact in the way that we parent. So for not being sure what your philosophy was, that's a pretty good one.
That was what I could think of. That's just really, I don't have any words. It's just grace and Jesus.
Right. And I think, too, we don't always think about what our philosophy is, but I think when we're forced to think about it, it's a healthy practice to stop and think Well, what would I say? What would I say my philosophy is? And I hope that even just thinking
Right.
about it was a nice mental exercise for you. And it's been
True,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting to hear what people have come up with. And it's I think as we listen to each other expound on our philosophies, it helps us craft our own philosophy in our minds too. And when we have a philosophy like that, I feel like it helps us to be more intentional about the decisions that we make.
Yes.
All right.
Intentional is good.
Yeah, it is. What would you say is your favorite thing to teach your children or watch them learn?
For my former teaching days, when I thought about this question, I thought the reason why I wanted to become a teacher was those aha moments, those like, oh, I get it moments, and I love
Mm,
those. So when I started seeing my children learn to recognize letters, learn to read, learn to write their names, that was a really big one. It was so exciting. My oldest, as I see him reading books, I really love that.
yeah.
And, spiritually, what I love is just watching them learn God's stories
Mm,
and remembering them, being able to tell me about it. And also, we've had some conversations with some neighbor kids lately with this, they don't believe in Jesus. They have different religions in their family. And just watching them be unafraid to just talk about Jesus to their
mm,
friends. And it's just so sweet. I just love
yeah.
that. And listening to them pray. And they're not always praying for they're not like super religious, like for like God, yay God all the time. But
Right.
when they are, when I see those moments, it's so sweet and I just love it.
Mm,
So
yeah. All right. Well, then on the other side of that, what's your least favorite thing to teach them or watch them learn?
there were a couple of different things that I thought about saying, but I think the one that we are working on right now is about gratitude. So teaching gratitude to my kids is something that I really struggle with and is really hard to do,
Mm.
especially when they're, oh, every time we go to the store, Mommy, can I have this? Mommy, can I have that? And like, okay, well, Mommy doesn't always have money to buy these things, and so sometimes we have to wait for birthdays, we have to wait for Christmas, we have to make a list and wait, and it's so hard to teach them in the waiting part, and so we try to get them to think about things more carefully, and also as we, remember other people who just don't have as much as we do in other countries, and even in the United States, we're just feeling blessed for what we have and trying to convey that to them. So,
Yeah.
but it's hard. It's hard for them to learn that. So
Right.
that's one thing I really,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Right. It definitely is. But as you know, and why you're even bothering, it's such an important attitude to have. But and then there are times that you find yourself struggling to show gratitude too, and then you're like the very thing I'm
Yeah.
trying to convince my children to adopt as an attitude, and here I am grumbling. Parenting sometimes is such a focus on the things that I'm not doing correctly, and sometimes it's a very humbling experience.
Yes, for sure. I feel like with my kiddos, it's a long process. And, I feel that can pray about things and talk about what we're grateful for and pray about, at night trying to even see things that we take for granted, like the breath that I just took. That's from God. And
Right.
the cozy beds that they sleep in, that's from God. And the food that we ate today, that's all from God. And trying to just teach them to give thanks to God, not just at meal times, but also just at nighttime. We kind of try and focus on it a little bit more about being thankful and for what we have.
Right. All right. So, what would you say has been a high moment for you in parenting?
Since I'm not, a super mom, I felt like this one, I was like, what should I say about this one? And I think for me, what I kind of landed on was when I can spend time self-sacrificially with my kiddos, and for my oldest, with Elliot, I feel that something that is his love language is playing Legos right now. So when I go and I put down what I'm doing, or I stop thinking about, oh, I need to clean, or I need to do the laundry, or whatever I need to do, but Elliot's begging me to spend time with him. So I feel like that's when I go and I play Legos and I go be silly with him and I love him. That's his language, and that's when I
Yeah.
feel like, oh, that's a really important moment. So I feel like I'm making those memories and that connection with him, that he's gonna feel loved.
Right.
And that's what I feel like, oh, that's a really good moment.
Yeah.
It's sometimes self-sacrificial for me when
Right.
I would rather just sit, I'm tired or whatever, but it's so important for him. And
Right.
for my daughter, it could be painting or playing Play-Doh, or just sitting and cuddling and giving her hugs. That speaks to her heart, and that makes her feel really loved. And for the baby, for Eliza, I feel like taking him outside to play, or downstairs is the big playroom and the mess down there, and I know it's going to make it even messier, but for me, just being present with him and doing what he wants to do for him, that's just helping him feel loved. So I feel that in those moments, I feel like, oh yes, this is what God wants me to do. This is loving them in a way that they feel loved and not feel that, okay, I'm doing something right.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a victory. And you're right. Sometimes it comes at self-sacrifice where, you have other things to do, and you're delaying the things that still are going to need to be done later on. And yet, you're right. Sometimes we need to stop and remember how important it is for us to be present in the moment and showing them the love that they need in the way that they understand it, because it's easy sometimes for us to do it in the way that we want to, but we need to make sure that we are intentional about the way that we show it, that it's a way that they understand it and perceive it. Before we were married, I read the 5 Love Languages book, and I know there are several different variations, including a child version of it. But the principles can be applied regardless of the relationship that you're talking about. And I just have found that to be such a key piece of information in understanding and relating to people, including our children, where, you have to be willing to sacrifice your preferences and analyze what makes that person feel loved, and then be intentional about showing them love in that manner. And I don't think there's any better version of, quote, super mom than to be showing your children love in the way that they need to be shown it.
Yeah.
So the other side, people tend to be able to come up with one on the other side a little bit easier because we're all very critical of ourselves. But what would you say is a low moment in parenting for you?
When I discipline out of my anger or my tiredness,
right.
That's when I feel that I have hurt them, and then that's when I feel like those are my lowest moments.
Yeah.
And I think it all centers around that when. So there are good moments when I discipline, and then I have had a couple of moments where my eldest son has said to me, I hate you, and that is the worst kind of feeling ever.
Right.
But in those moments, I think, oh, well, I'm disciplining because I love him and he needs me to be strong in this moment. And I just have to remember it's not really personal, and tomorrow he's going to say, I love you again.
Right.
So there's those low moments, and then there's the other moments where it's low for me personally, where I'm like, okay, this time I just disciplined him, but I disciplined out of that anger or tiredness, and they didn't deserve that harsh word from me, and that's when I feel, oh, I've blown it. So yeah, those are the moments where I feel, oh, please God, please allow them to remember more of the good than those regretful moments.
Right. Well, we're told in scriptures that love covers a multitude of wrongs. And I think that, your intentionality in showing your children love covers a lot of those human frailties where we make those mistakes. And I also think that when we make mistakes and we're willing to admit that to our children and say that we're sorry to our children and model that repentance and the forgiveness, I think that those are valuable lessons too, that our children see that to be an adult does not mean to be perfect, but that adults struggle too, and yet there's a humility in being willing to apologize and to seek forgiveness, and that redemption story. And I think that those are valuable lessons for our children to see also, even though Obviously we would prefer that they learn the positive lessons from us and not the ones that they learn because of
Yes.
what we shouldn't have done and then had to apologize for. But I do still think that it's important when we model those things that we are modeling what it means to be human to our children.
Yes, I have had to say quite often,
Uh,
Mommy's so sorry.
yes, yes,
Mommy's very sorry, please forgive me. And
right,
they're always so gracious.
yes,
And it's a wonderful thing to be able to receive forgiveness
yes,
for both of us,
right,
for them to me and me to them.
right.
It's very healing and
Mm,
very necessary, a daily thing sometimes.
right,
But very good and definitely models how Jesus forgives us.
definitely.
And so it's good, but it's hard.
Yes, I agree. All right, what would you say is your favorite mothering story?
Some of the sweetest moments in the day, I feel, for me are bedtime.
Mm,
And I know kids have different times when they like to talk.
yes.
And for mine, it's bedtime. And so, some of the sweetest moments that I really, really enjoy, especially with my oldest, Elliot, he's really chatty at bedtime. But we have had some of the best conversations. We talk about a lot of God in that time, and he'll talk about things he's learning or just often his confession time.
Okay.
Mommy, I have to tell you something at bedtime. A lot of times we'll do Bible stories. We have a really cool Bible that we just got, the Day-to-Day Bible, and 7 minutes a day and read the whole Bible through the year.
Oh, neat.
And it's really cool. It has 5 stories Monday through Friday, and then it also has a devotion book that comes with it, and it has different activities to do through the week. So we really enjoy reading that, and we like to read it by flashlight.
Oh, fun.
So it just makes it kind of different.
Yeah, that's fun.
So they'll ask me to turn the lights off and read it. So usually I use my camera, my phone, flashlight.
Yeah.
And they'll just sit and listen, and I'll read it to them. And so I feel like those moments, my daughter and my son share a room right now because the baby needs his own room.
Right.
So it's really fun that they can both be in their beds and cozy in their beds, and then I'll read to them. And those are just some of my very favorite times with them, and getting to talk to them about what's on their mind and what they're struggling with and what questions they have about God. And that's really sweet. That's really my favorite time of the day.
That's really special. How do you take care of yourself? What do you do for self-care to make time or take time for yourself?
Until recently, I think I have not been very good about self-care at all. I think I thought that if I took time for me, it would, I don't know how to explain it, but just, I guess every mom experiences this. Probably you feel like if you take time for you, then you're taking something away from your kids or your husband that you need to give to them.
Yes.
And for a very long time, I had a really hard time with this. And even just like eating fruit, like I would save everything for my kids, and I wouldn't take time to eat healthy myself. And just in the past maybe year or two, I've started thinking about, okay, now it's time to start exercising again and start eating healthy. And yes, you can have a peach or an apple, and you can do that. You're allowed to do that. It's good for you to do that.
Right.
And so I've been trying to look at my diet a little bit and try to exercise. It takes like minutes, and it makes me feel better about my day, about myself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of silly, but it's fun. And I feel like if I get a chance with my daughter and my son at school now, it's kind of nice just to have the little one, and I try to have a cup of coffee or hot chocolate or something, and just try and take a few minutes and breathe a little bit.
Right.
And so I think for me, that's kind of what I'm trying to work on. I'm not very good at it, but if I just try to add something to my routine that I'm already doing, then just adding one thing or here and there, that just kind of helps me to feel better, and just giving myself permission to do that has been really, really, really good for me.
Yes. Yeah, and I hope that you'll continue to add little pieces here and there as they make sense. But, we know that we are to, give of ourselves to our husband, to our families, to our children. And yet, if we're not also taking care of ourselves, eventually you become depleted. And, that's not healthy for you or for your children or your family in any way. And so, it is important for us to, we're not abandoning our families for lengthy pieces of time and calling it self-care. We're just, looking for ways that we can make sure that we are taking care of ourselves amidst the taking care of everybody else. And it's kind of like if you saw someone who is really, really tired, you'd be like, you really should go take a nap. Well, like, well, what is it that you need to tell yourself that you should be doing in order to stay healthy and be able to continue to serve your family in a healthy way? And so those sound like fun little starts to getting used to taking care of yourself too. And I hope that you'll continue looking for things that are fun or interesting to you, things that when you're done doing them, you can't help but smile. And those are all self-care, and it looks different for everybody, and it looks different for different stages or seasons of your family. And because what I did for self-care years ago is different than what I do for self-care now, based on what's going on in my family and even some of my own personal
Right.
preferences. So just keep building
Yeah.
that repertoire and being open to trying things and doing things that are healthy for you too.
Yes, and I think also now that I have two in school, it's a little easier to go out and have some time with other mommies,
Yes,
and that's refreshing too.
definitely.
Have being able to go out to Bible study is
Right,
wonderful.
right.
So that's another thing that I have started being able to do in the past year or two, and has been really, really good for me.
That's great. All right, what is your favorite life hack? Something that makes your life easier or simpler or faster or cheaper in some way.
So I used to think, oh, gosh, it's 4 o'clock and I have no idea what's for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would feel frustrated, or we would do something really easy, or probably something not so healthy, like mac and cheese for the second time of the week, or something like that. And I would feel, this is really hard. I wish I could plan ahead. So one thing I finally started doing was printing off my recipes and then making a binder.
Okay.
I just have printed off a bunch of recipes that I either really like or want to try, and I put them in a big binder. And of course, I have like so many cookbooks that I never open. But for some, my favorite ones, I've just sort of created my own recipe book, I guess you would say. And then I have another binder. So I started putting the recipes that I want to cook this week all in that binder. And then I know, then from there I can make my grocery list.
Oh, good idea.
And go shopping for those things. And that way I know what foods I need this week, because I'm going to make this. And then just picking like 1 or 2 days to cook maybe 2 meals. So then I can have a break of cooking 1 or 2 days during that week, or I could freeze something and pull it out later. So just something that I was reading, so it's not fully my idea, but has been really helpful to me, because I think the one part of day that is so chaotic is dinner time.
Definitely.
And I always feel bad. My husband walks in at the most chaotic time, and I'm always feeling like apologetic to my husband because I want to be welcoming to you. The kids are screaming, and I'm trying to figure out what's for dinner. So that's just like one thing where I feel like if I do this, and I don't do it every week, but I should, and I know when I do, it's so much less crazy, and I feel so much calmer, and I think it's really worth it when I invest my time in just a little bit more planning. But my family can feel so much more loved, and don't feel like mommy's crazy and mommy's yelling.
All right. What is your favorite parenting book?
Oh my goodness. So I had like so many. So when I first had my son, Elliot, my oldest, came along, I felt like I had no idea what to do. So all of my teaching background, I felt completely was inadequate for being a mom. And I was like, how do I take care of this tiny person? So, and I also had the postpartum.
Right.
So the first book I would really recommend, just if you're struggling with any kind of postpartum or just feeling angry with your kids because they're frustrating sometimes, there's this Anne Voskamp's book, 1,000 Gifts. Just kind of it changed my whole perspective about life and just looking for the positive.
Right.
And it helps with my self-being and my kids thinking more thankfully as well. So that's one that I would definitely recommend to moms. And there's a couple others that I read that have been so helpful to me. But the whole grace philosophy that I mentioned before comes from a book called Give Them Grace by Elise Fitzpatrick and her daughter Jessica Thompson.
Okay.
That's a really great one, just about giving them grace and teaching them Jesus every day. And that one was really very, very encouraging to me. And there's a couple others, Sacred Parenting by Gary Thomas, Shepherding a Child's Heart by Ted Tripp, and there's a fun, really easy read called Don't Make Me Count to 3 by Ginger Plowman.
That one is one of my favorites.
I've read that. It's a great one.
It's so good. Yes.
Gives me a lot of great ideas for now and for the future.
Yes. Yeah, I really like that one. I love the practical, in the trenches, right now parenting tips that one has.
Yes, I really had a lot of good things in there.
So
a lot
good.
of things that I printed out and hung up on my wall so that I could try and think of them throughout the day.
Right. Yeah, so good. All right, so I kind of interrupted you. Was that your last one, or did you have another one? I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, sorry. No, that one, that was kind of
okay. Good. All right. Well, that's a treasure, a set of treasures there. So thank you for sharing them. And the point of that is to, there are so many books out there. The point is to kind of give a recommendation of my favorites to anybody listening so that there's a place to start if they're looking for a book, rather than just the generic parenting search on Amazon, which will come up with way too many options. And so to have like a personal recommendation is helpful. And, whether it winds up being your favorite book or not, at least it gave you a place to start. And so that's the purpose of that question. So thank you for sharing your favorites.
Yeah.
So, wrapping it up, what would you give as a word of encouragement to other moms out there?
Two things I hope will be encouraging. The first thing I wanted to say was just thinking back to that first baby and the postpartum that I had. It was really overwhelming for me, and I felt really, really alone. And for that first probably about maybe 6 or 8 months, I had a really hard time with just feeling very isolated. So I would say to moms out there, just find a mom's group somewhere. Because once I joined, at my church, there was a group called Moms, but there's tons of other groups as well that just meet moms that just need have play dates.
Right.
Just getting out of the house. It's so wonderful to feel like you're alive again, and that there are other people out there who are in the same situation as you. And even anyone who's listening to this podcast right now, just it's great to just reach out in some way and having a group of people. I've even met people just at activities that my kids have been at, like swim class, and because they're friends. And it's wonderful just to have somebody supporting you.
Yes.
And so just to not be afraid to reach out, and you might be really late because your baby had a dirty diaper and, or your toilet training, those kind of things that make it really difficult and can be isolating. But, even if you're half an hour late or an hour late, like just go and get that time, because it will recharge you for the rest of your day.
Definitely.
And the other thing I would want to say is, a lot of moms believe that there's a certain way that you have to parent, or certain things, so many classes that kids have to sign up for. They have to be in a sport, and they have to play an instrument, and they have to do volunteering, and they have to be here and there, and they have to be at church groups. And, parenting success, I think, is all about your kids feeling loved. And so I would just say, to the mom out there, what parenting looks like for you is going to look different for someone else, and don't get caught up in a lie that you have to look a certain way to be a successful mom. And I just feel like that's really important, that each mom knows that you know what you can handle and what stress level you can handle and what your kids can handle. And it looks different for every mom. So don't put that pressure on yourself to feel like you have to have your kids involved in all these different activities. But just make sure that your kiddos feel loved and just keep doing the best that you can do. And with God's help, it's going to happen, and your kids are going to grow up, and, and all of this crazy season is going to pass. And that's what I tell myself, and that's what I just like to tell the moms out there. We're going to make it through.
Yeah, that's great advice. And yeah, you're so right that sometimes we put pressure on ourselves, and sometimes we need to back up and say, like, are these things really necessary? Is this good? Is this the best thing for right now or for my family? And I think analyzing that from time to time is very healthy, to make sure that you're not just caught up in the wave of what everybody else is doing and says is important. So that's fantastic advice. Amy, thank you so much for letting me interview you and for telling your story and talking about your family. I know it was a little bit of a stretch for you to be willing to do it, and I just thank you for being willing to put yourself out there and for sharing with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for interviewing me. I feel honored.
You're very welcome. Well, you have a nice night. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you, Andrea.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on the No Mom is an Island podcast. We hope that it was an encouragement to you wherever you are in your mothering journey. If you would like to share your story or would like to see something added to our interviews, please contact us at nomomisanisland@gmail.com or send us a message on Facebook or Instagram. If you have enjoyed listening to the stories of other moms, there are 3 ways you can help this podcast to continue and to thrive. Please check out those ways in the episode description listed below today's episode. In addition to the ways that you can help this podcast continue, there is also a list of the books that are discussed in today's episode. Please check them out.